Hello and welcome to Nigeria, the road to 2019, a series of programs where Arise News places the audience and the choice at the heart of our coverage of the upcoming presidential elections. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, all the news, comment and analysis that provide unrivaled insight into Nigeria 2019, including after initially boycotting the signing ceremony of a peace accord between the presidential candidates and their political parties to work for a peaceful poll ahead of elections due in February, Nigeria's main opposition presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar, has now signed that concordat. We'll speak to the man who brokered that accord, former head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, about election violence and why Nigeria needs a peace committee. And later, we'll speak with a leading PDP member of the House of Representatives, Sergius Ogun, about the ongoing standoff between the National Assembly and President Buhari over his decision to veto the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Now, as you may have heard, Nigeria's presidential candidates and their political parties have signed an agreement to work for a peaceful poll ahead of elections due in February. The peace pledge was signed by President Muhammadu Buhari as well as 70 other candidates, all of them committing themselves to promote peace during what's expected to be a tightly contested election next year. However, the main opposition candidate, Atiku Abubakar from the PDP party, initially boycotted the event, as did a number of other opposition presidential candidates, including Donald Duke and Obi Ezekwesili. Mr. Abubakar had failed to join his main rival, President Muhammadu Buhari, in signing the accord on Tuesday, with his aide saying he had not been officially invited to the ceremony. Now, though, both Mr. Abubakar and Mrs. Ezekwesili have now signed that agreement, which was brokered by former head of state Abdulsalami Abubakar, amid fears that the elections could be marred by violence and vote rigging. The pact specifically mandates candidates to publicly speak against religious, ethnic and electoral violence. In 2015, a similar accord is believed to have helped in ensuring peaceful polls, which led to then President Goodluck Jonathan accepting defeat. Well, for more on this, I spoke earlier to the man who convened that peace committee and the Nigerian leader responsible for this country's return to civilian rule in 1999, former head of state and military president Abdulsalami Abubakar. General Abdulsalami Abubakar, thank you very much indeed for talking to Arise News.
You're welcome, thank you.
First of all, tell us what the object of this peace committee is. Why does Nigeria need a peace committee and a concordat between the political parties? I mean, it sounds like there's a war out there.
Right, thank you very much for that question. Indeed, in developing countries, including Nigeria, there is intense rivalry between political parties seeking offices and the various election posts. And this normally results in violence. You have arson, you have people killed, you have properties destroyed. So in order to bring succor to our people, to see election as something to celebrate, not to go to war, so to speak, a group of gentlemen headed by late Kofi Annan, may his soul rest in peace, decided to assist during the 2015 general election. This is really what gave birth to the Peace Committee. The essence of the Peace Committee is to sanitize our political field, to ensure that politicians play the game to the rules and there is no politics of violence, to ensure during their campaigning they campaign on issues, not on personality. You will see all over developing countries in Africa and indeed in Nigeria, you will see opponents, instead of talking on issues, they start calling names and abusing individuals. You could see during the 2014-2015 election the dirty politics, the uncalled for campaigns, posters, in the broadcasts, in the jingles, on the television, the ugly things that were displayed. So we thought it is time really Nigeria got out of this and to ensure that we play decent politics, to save the lives of our citizens, to avoid destruction of lives and property.
And of course, you mentioned the 2014-2015 election. I mean, this same concordat was signed at that time, and yet you talk about the amount of manipulation and destruction and, if you like, nod to violence that took place during that time.
Well, after the signing of the 2015 accord, really I must commend the politicians, because as much as possible they try and abided by that accord which they signed. So towards the end of the election, we saw less of violence. We saw more of objective campaigning. And we are just trying to build on what happened in 2015. Right now, that we are going on to 2019, certainly there are some skirmishes here and there. So we need to nip it in the bud before it gets out of hand. And I'm happy yesterday, quite a number of the 91 registered political parties were there, and they signed the peace accord, ensuring that they will do politics by the game and by the rules, and also they will abhor any violence during the campaign. They also signed an accord to ensure that they check their followers to ensure that they do the right thing. Because by and large, it is not the leaders that cause this violence. It is the followers who really, they claim to do this on behalf of their bosses, I would say, let me use that language. But invariably, you will find that the contestants really do not know what is happening. But in some cases, you will also see some of the contestants being involved physically in this verbal abuse. But thank goodness we are coming out of it gradually, and I'm happy that yesterday we signed this accord.
And of course, for that accord to be effective, you need the buy-in, as you correctly pointed out, of as many political parties and presidential candidates as possible. One notable absence yesterday was, of course, Atiku Abubakar, who heads the main opposition party. We understand that he has now signed that accord. Can you confirm that?
Yes, actually, it is from there I'm coming here straight. There has been a break of communication within the system. Their system, I mean the PDP Secretariat. Before arriving to the date of the 11th yesterday, we had a pre-meeting with all the political parties where we have decided and set the date of 11th. We now followed it up with a letter which was sent to the PDP headquarters and all other political party offices, and we had acknowledgement from the PDP that they have received that letter, indeed with their stamp. And I think the problem is within their system. But thankfully, he has come this morning, and he has signed the accord.
So that's a unified front now, essentially.
Right.
And are you hearing the kind of rhetoric that reassures you that this will be a non-violent election, or might there be attempts to influence the vote in such a way as to force opposing sides to draw battle lines?
Well, from what happened yesterday and from the utterances of the leaders of all the political parties, each and every one that we engage with really confirm they abhor violence, and they will do the best they can to abide to the letter of the peace accord. So I believe we will have, to some extent, a peaceful election. But you cannot overrule where some miscreants somewhere will try to do something. That is natural. Anywhere in the society you'll find people here and there. But by and large, I am encouraged with the utterances of the leaders of the parties, and I hope they will abide by what they signed.
And Mr. President, as we come to the end of the year and the month before the new year, it clearly is a good time to take stock. What for you are the strands to pull out at the moment? What's the big picture that you're seeing of the political atmosphere? I mean, does the pulse feel febrile, everyone waiting for the onslaught that is coming, or does everything feel a bit aimless at the moment?
Well, you know, at any time there is election all over, there is election fever. So this is what Nigeria is going through now. Of course, there are more gladiators in the field. Let me use that word. Last 2015 election, we have just a couple of presidential candidates, so to speak. Today, as we are speaking to you, we have 73 candidates who aspire to contest for the presidency. And I think that will gladden the mind of Democrats, because now the British say the more the merrier, but the fewer the better. But again, you can understand now that the field for democracy has been opened, and people are free now to join whatever party they want. But again, the citizen, I will say, have a lot of options to at their disposal to decide which party they want. So certainly, as we go into electionary campaign, there is going to be an interest in. We will see as we go along. We'll see a lot of mergers and buy-in with the political parties, because certainly, yes, there are 91 registered political parties, but I must say, some of these parties, so to speak, are really now in I would say, embryo state, where they are growing. But so it is.
You were, of course, the military head of state who took over from the late General Abacha in 1998, and you were quick to lay a roadmap to civilian rule, and you eventually handed over on schedule to President Obasanjo. In effect, you set this country on the path to democracy, and you have won a lot of prestige, a lot of praises and popularity for that, both in Africa and the world. What do you remember of that period? And the follow-up to that would be, how do you think Nigeria has evolved politically since then?
Well, let me say, when destiny brought me to take over as the head of state of Nigeria, the country was at precipice, where there is a lot of agitation to get the military out of governance back to the barracks. And what really spurred us on to really actualize the handing over was really some of us of the old military stock. We saw the scars of war who fought in the our civil war, decided, look, we fought to keep this country together. We must make sure that it is kept together. And so we decided, me and my colleagues, and of course the Nigerian population have to be thanked and praised for the pressure they put. All hands were put on deck, and then we achieved what we did. Now, since 1998, where are we today? I think we have come a long way. There has been interrupted governance handing over from one democratically elected government to the other, to the extent that in 2015 we have seen a sitting President Jonathan conceding. I think we must commend his efforts and we must thank him. He has set an example not only for Nigeria, but indeed for Africa and the developing world. So democracy is coming slowly, and I'm happy we are here where we are today. Of course, you can't say the democracy in Nigeria is perfect. Of course, there are here and there where we hope there will be improvement as we proceed.
And how much is that post-2015 revolutionary if you like, euphoria still present in Nigeria when Nigerians came together, as you said, and voted out an incumbent government in a move that was unprecedented in this country's history?
Well, it depends where you are talking from. Of course, a lot of progress have been made. Of course, when you are talking of democracy, you will always find the ruling party ruling, and of course, you will find the opposition always trying to criticize the government in power, but that is what it should be. The job of any government is party in power is to govern, and the opposition to check and make sure that the government is kept online to do the right thing. I'm happy by and large this is being done, although it's not perfect, but we are getting there.
Do you think the current government should be given a chance to stay on and finish the job that they started, or do you think that they should be, somebody else should take over from them?
Well, we should leave it to the electors to decide. It's not for me to say that.
Let's just go back to that time 20 years ago when you took over as head of state. Many people have wondered why. I mean, you seemed diametrically opposed in your philosophy, in your actions, to your predecessor, General Abacha. And many people have wondered why you did not resign from Abacha's government to show that you were displeased with him and the sort of rule that he had imposed on Nigerians. I mean, the feeling seemed to be that by staying on, you were a tacit supporter of his type of, if you like, jackboot dictatorial rule. I mean, what's your reaction to that? You were his chief of defense staff.
Yes, it depends on who is talking. You know, to change a system, you'll be part and parcel of that system. You can't just change the system when you're outside. Even if you're outside, you are more effective if you are within the system.
But, I mean, did you have a close working relationship with General Abacha?
Well, of course we did. But again, the buck stops with the president.
And yet you stayed in that government.
Right, I did.
Why did you stay?
I just told you, if you want to change the system, you must be inside the system.
And of course, in fairness to you, as soon as you had the opportunity, you did change the system.
Right.
Now let's talk about your peace efforts beyond Nigeria, because you're noted for doing a considerable amount of work, not just in Nigeria, but across Africa. Tell us about that.
Well, thank goodness that somebody's efforts is being appreciated. After leaving governance, I was an envoy for the United Nations, for the Commonwealth, for the AU, and the ECOWAS. And right now I'm in a panel set up by the African Union called African High Implementation Panel on Sudan. We are working to make sure that there is peace in Sudan. And at one time, the United Nations appointed me a member of the Inter-Congolese Dialogue when we are trying to resolve the problems in the Congo. And also, the ECOWAS appointed me to mediate in the Liberian crisis when we were able to get President Taylor out of Liberia and conduct and install an interim government for 2 years, after which election was conducted, and Madam Salif Johnson emerged as the president. And also the ECOWAS mandated me to look into the issues of the Niger political logjam during Tanja. So I will say Alhamdulillah, thank God that somebody's effort is appreciated, and they're giving me an opportunity to make peace wherever we can.
You're clearly a very busy man.
Well, thank goodness that somebody is healthy and is still able to contribute his own quota to humanity.
It still astonishes many Nigerians that you were not in the ilk of Nigerian leaders, that you came in and literally, after 1 year, handed over to a civilian government.
Well,
I mean, that's almost as unprecedented as the handover in 2015 from an incumbent to a newcomer.
well, like I say, one, we thank Almighty God for his guidance, and we thank Nigerians. Actually, it is Nigerians that made it happen. Initially, when we said we were leaving, nobody believed us. They say it's the same old song. But later on, as we progress, they realize, yes, we are serious, we are leaving. So they joined to give us the support, and that took us to the handing over.
You, of course, worked with a number of military heads of state. You worked with Abacha, you worked with Babangida, you worked with Obasanjo. To some extent, you also probably worked with Buhari in some capacity. I mean, as you look at the future of Nigeria, do you see that as the end of an era and the beginning of a new era, and therefore there should be a clearing out of the wardrobe, as it were, to give new blood a new chance?
Well, everything depends on where you are coming from and who is talking. Certainly, when you look at the secession process in our democratic field, you could now see gradually younger generation are coming to take over, and you could see in the wisdom of the National Assembly and Mr. President, they signed a bill called Not Too Young to Run. I think we are in that process where the older generation are going to fade away and the younger ones are taking over. By and large, if you look at the legislators you have today and the governors in the state, they are fairly young people. And by the array of the 73 presidential aspirants you have today, you can see they are fairly young people. And I believe gradually, give it 10 years in the making, naturally the older generation, my class and so on, were going to fade away.
Very quickly and finally, what inspires you, and what message would you like to leave for Nigerians who are coming after you in the political field?
Well, I do hope and I pray we will reach a stage where every Nigerian will think Nigeria first. At this moment, you will find that we are thinking about our local government first, our state before Nigeria. I want to see a reverse of that. Any of our political leaders who come up who is hoping to lead the country will think of Nigeria first. Nigeria should be his constituency, not his state, not his local government. And I do hope Nigerians will now build a trust. We should be trusting ourselves that wherever you come from, you are a Nigerian. And if you made commitment, you should be trusted that you will abide by that commitment. It is the people that make the nation. It's not the leaders. So I hope all of us together will join together, all hands on deck, to build Nigeria to a better place.
General Abdulsalami Abubakar, former head of state of Nigeria, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed.
What a pleasure. Thank you. That's the former head of state and military president Abdulsalami Abubakar, who was responsible for this country's return to civilian rule in 1999, and who, of course, is the convener of that peace committee, the peace accord that's just been signed by most of the political parties, talking to me earlier. You're watching Nigeria, the road to 2019, plenty more still ahead, including as the debate over President Buhari's decision to veto the Electoral Act Amendment Bill rages on. We'll speak with a leading member of the opposition PDP in the National Assembly. Stay with us.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Think Zenith. In today's fast-moving, fast-changing world, you need a financial partner that understands your unique expectations. A bank with presence in major financial centers across the world, with the enabling platform to facilitate seamlessly whenever, wherever, however. A bank with best-in-class financial solutions from a superb combination of technology and human touch for easy, fast and secure banking that creates real value. Turning dreams into reality is now in your hands. People, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
As a fashion writer, I know how quickly trends are created and changed. In business, it's no different. To stay ahead, I needed a plan flexible enough to meet my changing communication needs. More Business 2.0 didn't just give me voice and data in one package. I got a whole lot more. With More Business, setting up my website was no problem. But I'm not just a fashion writer. I also own a home decor store before I decided to open an accessory store. With my customized More Business plan, managing my staff's communication is easy. No matter how frequently they come or they go. With 9mobile's new online self-service this week, I could adapt my plans to include this.
From 2,000 Naira, choose a business bundle, customize your staff's voice and data lines, and enjoy a variety of add-on business services. Dial *200 *5# now to subscribe. More business.
Welcome back to Nigeria, the road to 2019. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, amid warnings about potential election violence in a ballot expected to be one of the most closely fought in Nigeria's political history, there's been deep concern that the way the current electoral law is structured could lead to the poll not being free and fair. During the last presidential election in 2015, lots of issues were raised that potentially marred the vote and led to numerous legal challenges. So, the National Assembly amended the Electoral Act, which was from 2010, and sent it to President Buhari for his assent. But he declined to give his approval, insisting that signing the bill into law so close to the 2019 elections would create confusion and uncertainty. Well, since then, the opposition have been up in arms, suggesting that the president has a hidden agenda. Well, Honorable Sergius Ogun is a leading member of the opposition PDP party from Edo State. He's the deputy chairman of the Committee on the Federal Capital Territory in the House of Representatives, and he joins me now in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Lovely to see you here.
Thank you for having me.
What's the current mood in the National Assembly regarding the President's refusal to assent to that Electoral Act amendment bill?
Well, the opposition, like you rightly said, are not happy. They are not comfortable with the fact that the President has promised to organize a free, fair, credible, and transparent election would not assent to a bill that will make that work possible. That's from the opposition perspective. But today, earlier on, there was a press conference by the members in the government, members from APC, that there's nothing wrong with it. So, but, well, I think there's going to be a debate tomorrow. There was supposed to be a motion on that today. It didn't come up, but I am aware there's one in the making. So hopefully tomorrow there will be a motion, and then we're going to take it up in the House, on the floor.
So the message that the National Assembly is keen to give to the Nigerian public regarding this Electoral Act is a message that's different for the PDP than it is for the APC?
Unfortunately, I think so, yeah, and it shouldn't be, because I am one that believes that we are Nigerians first. There's no APC, there's no PDP in terms of we have a great country and we should make it work. So I tend not to think like a PDP member. My take here is this: we have a president. When he was elected, he had the goodwill. Here he was the first president since 1999 that has won an election and didn't have to go to court. He didn't have to worry about court pronouncement or anything. So much goodwill. He was in the US, one of his first trips, and he granted an interview to Nigerian television stations. I think I actually watched this on Ebony television, when he said he was involved in elections previously 3 times and he was denied by INEC, by the police, by the courts. So I would have expected for such a president to vow to say the last thing, if the last thing I would do in this country or for this country will be free, fair, credible, and transparent election. A legacy I'm ready to leave. But I don't think from his body language and everything leading to this decline of ascent, he has done that. For his age, ordinarily, I would have thought that's what he would do. In any case, the suspicion is very ripe now because this has been going on for the past 10 months, the back and forth. Someone, an APC member told me today that, look, it's not the president. The president was ready to sign, he's the Attorney General. But this is my question. We didn't vote for the Attorney General. We voted for the president. And this is where I take it. I'm going to be facing election in February 2019, less than 2 months away from now. I really don't care if I win or I don't win. Because I was doing something before I got here. And I can either go back to that or chart a new course. If the people sent me to Abuja to represent them, why should I strangulate them? Why should I strangle them to represent them? So that's why I cannot understand why anything that will aid the election would not be supported. In this day and age, we are still talking about credible election, and then why one wonders why we are behind.
Well, let's talk about the National Assembly, because my understanding was that when you passed that, you being the National Assembly, passed that bill and sent it to the president for his assent, there was bipartisan unity on that. In other words, you secured the majority and passed the vote. Why is there suddenly a question mark over that bipartisan unity?
Well, the chairman of INEC in the House is an APC member. The chairman in the Senate, I think, was APC. Maybe, I don't know if he's one of the members that crossed to PDP in the Senate. Going into this, we all worked in one accord. Yeah, there were dissenting voices. I remember once we were doing the committee of the whole, and some of the clauses passed, and the guy got up and said that, look, what's he doing here? He actually raised his voice and said, you are just passing a PDP, amendment. But then he left. The narrative has changed because of the tension that's building up right now. That is why I think it's very disgraceful that we had a golden opportunity to improve on the way election is done in this country.
And they're playing politics.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, because it's natural for them to want to say, okay, yeah, the president has approved this. You can only have few of them that will criticize. Some behind the scene will tell you should have known this. I have an APC member, strong member from my constituency, that told me some 3 months back that this president is not going to sign this. And he says it's a shame that he's taking us 20 years back. Some of these same APC members will tell you that off record. But when they come to the camera or come to the floor, they tend to want to align. But again, I think this should be criticized by all. Because people are embracing modern technology. Why do we want to be analog?
Do you think it's a bit bizarre, really, that the president's excuse or reason for not signing that bill is that it's too close to the elections and that it's going to create confusion and uncertainty, when in fact he had the original document 10 months before and could have raised that question, but waited and kept sending it back till the very last minute? Then he turns around and says, well, sorry, it's too late.
Yeah, that's why I say it's very disgraceful that this will happen. He actually heard that the Attorney General, the advisor to the President on National Assembly matters, that's from the Senate angle, all worked together on this with INEC and then the National Assembly. So when you send a bill to the president and he's saying, I have an issue with item 1, 2, 3, and he's sent back, the handwriting was already on the wall. Even people that were not members of the National Assembly, that are not even lawyers, already saw it. If he really wanted to embrace technology, improvement in electioneering processes, I would have thought the thing to do, yeah, there are checks and balances. They will come together. The Attorney General will work with the National Assembly. They will sit down together. These errors will be pointed out and will be corrected, and then you have a clean copy sent to the president. But to say it's not the fault of the president, it's the Attorney General, who appointed him. You know?
Just to be clear, because you've obviously seen this electoral amendment bill in its entirety. Nigerians are seeing bits and pieces of it. What are the specific issues that that electoral amendment bill set out to correct?
Well, I think there was...
I mean, in summary, the most important ones, obviously.
Yeah, the transmission of the results from the units, and then the pasting of results in the units. And some of these things, well, I think the contentious issue now is other technology. I think the card reader is already in existence.
Right.
I think to embrace other technology is a challenge right now by them. So I go back again to Jega. Some of us faulted Jega for not trying out.
Mahmoud Jega was the former chairman, of the Electoral Commission, and he presided over the 2015 election, for those who don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
We had faulted him when he did not try out the card reader on Ekiti and Osun. And I think the present INEC chairman tried out some of these innovations that were in the amendment bill in Osun. And you see how that turned out. You know, there was even an issue of an ad hoc staff or INEC staff going to pull the result that's already pasted in the unit. Because I think what they did there was that voting took place, they transmitted electronically to the server, to the main server. So as at the time they were announcing the result, they announced it in the polling unit, they pasted a copy in that unit, and it was transmitted immediately. So that will cut off the manipulation along the way. And you see how the election turned out. So who would not want to embrace that if there are no other intentions or motives? And that's why people are very disappointed. And like I said, you can only hit up the system from now. All is be going very well till now. So I can only wish Nigeria the best.
But from your position inside the National Assembly, does it seem likely that the National Assembly will override President Buhari's veto?
I don't see how that's going to happen. It's not the issue of whether the opposition has 2/3 majority. Section 58(5) says that when the president declares assent, the House will represent the bill and vote on it and should get 2/3 to override the assent. But as it is right now, I think the president is presenting the budget on Tuesday next week, after which we will close and go on vacation. Then we'll come back in January. In reality, I don't think we are coming back in January as such, because the election will just be less than a month away.
Right.
So you will not have people come here. So who is going to see to override the
Well, my next question was going to be what the timeline is now for action on that bill in the National Assembly, and what you're saying essentially, because most people were hoping that there'd be a vote this week. In your assessment, it doesn't seem likely.
No, there will be no vote. Not this week, not even next week. Yeah, because people are already campaigning. There are people that are members that have not showed up in the House in the last 2 weeks in their constituencies. And then, like I said, we are closing next week for Christmas. I think they waited, they knew what they were doing all the while. That's my biggest disappointment. They knew what they were doing all the while. And then it's a shame that this is happening. Like I said again, at a time when people are embracing technology, you are taking us back. And I hope history will judge them fairly.
So what impact, given, because I mean what you're essentially telling us is that there's nothing you can do now, nothing that can be done, that this bill is going to be kept in abeyance, that it's essentially going to be in limbo, and that Nigeria is going to use the 2010 Electoral Act for the 2019 elections. Is there anything at all that you can take away from that gives you comfort? Because the Independent National Electoral Commission has said that it will go ahead and use the electronic voting system, that it's going to rely on other sort of laws and sort of peripheral rules to enable it, because it's mandated to conduct free and fair elections anyway. So if it sees fit to use that, it'll go ahead and do it. And in fact, they're supposed to have a meeting, I think, this week we had somebody from the CUPP, the coalition of parties that's part of the PDP, or the PDP is part of. He said that they were putting pressure on INEC, and they were going to hold consultations with them this week to ensure that they were going to do those elections irrespective of what the Electoral Act says. Does that give you some consolation?
No, not at all. If you remember what even led to this, was the judgment that came from the Supreme Court in the case of Wike, Governor Wike of Rivers State.
Yes.
When the Supreme Court ruled that the INEC guideline is not superior to the law. So hence we wanted to make it the law going forward. So if same INEC is going to come out today and say, okay, we are going to stick to our guidelines, the courts are still there.
Yes, so in other words, the risk is that INEC might go ahead and say this, but somebody will go to court.
Exactly.
And the issue will become a question of which law takes precedence. And therefore you could create a lot of confusion.
Which we don't need right now.
Right.
But there's something a bit comforting, and I think I am ashamed to say that here, that I think someone told me today, just this evening, that the President Jonathan, actually assented to the bill that was amended March 2015 before he left office. So if that's the case, we will not be talking about the 2010. So it's possible when he assented to that approved the use of card readers. So if INEC is going to ride on that, but INEC should come out and talk.
But you're saying if. I mean, you guys are the lawmakers.
Yeah,
I would have thought that you would have done your homework. I mean, not you personally, but the National Assembly as a body, to know which law. I mean, that's probably because the president sent the thing back. In other words, you're giving sort of credibility to the president's dissension, because the president sent that bill back, saying not only is it too late, but almost like little children in elementary school, he's pointing out to you, well, Section 5, Section 3, this needs clarification. Why is this section saying this when it should be saying that? I mean, almost like you guys didn't really read your thing properly. I mean, you were too busy doing other things.
The point I'm making,
like collecting lots of money from the Nigerian sort of coffers, and I don't mean paying yourselves a lot of money when you ought to be doing the work for which you're being paid.
Do you want me to address that? Maybe I should address that before I go into the meat
address
of this
the first one first. I mean, and then we can talk about that if you so choose.
Yeah, sure. I would like to address that.
Yeah.
Here, the Attorney General is pointing out these issues, and I'm reliably informed that the Attorney General worked with the National Assembly. That's what I'm saying. It is a deliberate attempt to rig the 2019 elections. So if he worked with the National Assembly to get a clean copy sent to the president, why is he on one side today and is going behind to do a different thing? And then people say, don't blame the president, blame the Attorney General. I did not vote for the Attorney General.
Yeah, but it may not just be the attorney. I mean, I expect the president has a slew of legal advisors. I mean, I know people who are in his inner circle who are special advisors on judicial matters, special advisors on all kinds of things. I mean, the Attorney General may be the person signing off in the end on the documents, but it doesn't mean that if the president says, hey, you're my special assistant or my special advisor on the law, I mean, take a look at this document, and if other people point anomalies to that document, that he should say, oh well, I'm going to ignore those anomalies because the Attorney General gave his assent to it.
That thing went 4 times.
Yeah.
And like I said, it started more than 10 months ago. So if the Attorney General was in a buy-in, whoever else is advising the president is not higher than the Attorney General. He's the chief legal officer of this country. So I expected that whoever that person is still under the Attorney General. Then that would mean that he should have fired the Attorney General like yesterday, if we're going to believe that.
So you think part of the mess that we're in at the moment is because of the Attorney General?
I don't think so. They all agreed for this process to follow and end this way. Someone actually told me, a retired INEC resident electoral officer told me, everything they want to use in rigging the 2019 elections is what you guys have amended. So you have to insist that he signs. Told me some months back. And that has played out right now. So the point I am making here is not so much of the National Assembly not doing their work. But even when you had the executive arm working together to make this work, they turn around and say, okay, you haven't done this right, you haven't done. What is wrong if the president is really interested in making this work? In sending that team to say, okay, you guys work together and I want this be this way. Being a father, he could have done that. And they have done, like Senator Tazi was saying today, I think that was this bill to enable us have the EFCC or something. He said that bill was done in 8 days, everybody working together, because we're going to be suspended by the international communities. That happens. So, like I said, this is a deliberate attempt to rig the 2019, and to be very unfortunate. Let me quickly answer the second one about National Assembly busy paying themselves. National Assembly, the salary of the National Assembly, no member gets close to ₦1 million for salary. The running cost that everyone talks about is like an interest that you get, commissioners get in the state, ministers get in the federal, and even the local government advisors get. You do not retire your salary. I don't think you retire yours, or even your allowances. Our running cost is retired every month. And if you ask me, I came from a business background, and I'm happy to go back there. If you ask me, I would even prefer not to get that running cost. Because it didn't start today. It's always been there from 1999. I guess they put this together because of the exposure in the constituencies. So, for me, it should be taken away. I have also even suggested, pay members sitting allowance. So when you come in, you sign, you get maybe 10 naira or whatever. It should be a service to the nation.
Right.
That's my take.
But you're still collecting yours, though.
That's what I'm saying. For me, it's not an issue. If my constituents, they are watching me, they know where I'm coming from. It's not an issue. The issue is you collected, we are expected to be home more than 4 times in a month, or about 4 times in a month, or every month go to your constituency. And I do that. Whatever I earn is not enough to even sustain that. But like I said, I don't want to personalize this right now. So like, I just want to take this mentality of...
You want to make it clear to people that you've got issues with it. Right, okay.
No, not so much of that. When they say they are paying themselves so much, has anybody ever asked a minister, what is your running cost? What's your interest?
I've certainly asked ministers.
And what did they tell you?
Well, I mean, that's not an issue that we're here to discuss.
Yeah, so the point I'm making...
But the point really is that the cumulative... I mean, people, you see, you can say all kinds of things about, you know, whether this is impressed or whether this is running, whatever it is. The bottom line from the Nigerian ordinary person's point of view is that when you put it all together, this is the amount of money this person gets. It's an astonishingly large amount of money. Whether you call it salary or allowance or running costs or whatever you call it. You see what I mean? That's really the bottom line.
Call it what it is. I'm sure you came from the UK or you lived in the UK. If you are not well in the UK, do you call your member of parliament? There's NHS. If your roof is blown, do you call your member of parliament? No. When your child can't go to school, do you call your member of parliament? That's what I'm saying.
So what you're saying is that you factor in those costs and say that, I mean, because is there any way that we can check that given this is the amount of money you were given, this is the amount of money you allocated to someone who called you because their roof blew off, and this is somebody who called you because they had to go to hospital?
Can do that.
No, I'm asking you a straight question.
There's freedom of information. So I say people are too lazy in this country. Even you, the journalist.
No, but I'm asking you a question. You're here with me.
Yes, with the freedom of information.
Never mind the freedom of information.
You can request for that. That's what I'm telling you. You don't even have to rely on what I'm telling you.
But before I get, because if I go and request a freedom of information privilege to get to your expenses. I want to have it on record that this is what you said about your expenses.
Correct.
I would then compare it to that freedom of information.
It is broken down on how you spent. Some
Right.
for running the office, some for the constituency, and all that. It's broken down. And you are supposed to present receipts.
No, you
For
said
some of them that you can present receipts for.
supposed to. But of course,
Okay,
there are a lot of non-receipted
yeah,
things.
that's the point I'm trying
I
to
would
make.
imagine that a significant percentage of those are
Are
non-receipted.
receipted for. No, they are receipted for. Yeah, if you have travel allowances and all, okay. I mean, if you feed people, if you are doing empowerment, you have to feed 100 people and all that. Who's going to give you receipt for that? For the cooking or for giving them transport?
Right.
But to a large extent, you bring receipt for this.
Okay, let's move away from that, because that was not really the thrust of this discussion.
Yeah, but I'd
Although
like
I'm
to-
glad you brought it up, and I'm glad that you tried to clarify.
you brought it up.
The
And
situation.
I
Well,
tried
I
to
mean
clarify
that
it.
you wanted to follow it up.
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about that peace accord that we heard the former head of state Abdulsalami Abubakar talking about earlier. He, of course, is the inspiration behind it. But for a moment there, it seemed like Atiku Abubakar, the PDP presidential candidate, your presidential candidate, wasn't going to sign it. He now has, but did he avoid that event yesterday in order not to run into his arch rival, President Buhari, who was there?
I don't think so. I mean, if from what we read on social media, and that he gave more than 5 billion to the campaign, then why will he be running away from him? So I don't think so. Maybe he didn't get the communication right. I don't know. But
Well, that's
in any case,
what they said.
Yeah, but in any case, what was even the essence of signing that peace accord?
Well, I was going to ask you that
Yeah.
question. Do you think Nigeria needs that peace accord?
I think the paper on which they signed that is even worthless right now.
Yeah,
the
but-
things you needed to do to make election peaceful, you are not doing.
Right. So I mean, would it make a difference? Because that's another point that General Abdulsalami Abubakar raised. Would it make a difference to the people on the ground where the violence takes place that this accord has been signed? Because, I mean, it's not the presidential candidates who carry out the violence, but often the members of their parties at the lowest levels, the ward level who do so, sometimes even without the knowledge of those on top. So I'm just trying to understand what difference that would make. I suppose that what they're saying is that every time they go out, they should speak against it.
I know I'm a lawyer, so I know what they are trying to achieve.
Right.
You shouldn't be seen to be making provocative statements. You shouldn't be seen encouraging it. So when you sign on to that, in the event you want to make, when you go out for campaigns and you want to make hate speeches or you want to respond in a nasty way, you remember that.
Right.
That you have signed on
So
to
to
this.
that extent, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good thing, but for a president that wants to have free and fair and credible election, free, fair, credible and transparent election, should have signed the amendment to the Electoral Act.
Yeah, but I mean, the signing of the Amendment Act, that's not the only thing that peaceful elections are dependent upon. I mean, there are so many other things, which is why some people argue that this is a good thing.
The campaign's leads eventually dovetail into the elections. The peace accord, if he has a safety net, safety harness against hate speeches and provocative speeches, what about the elections? Most times the problems don't come from the campaigns. It's the election. And if we are saying, give us an instrument that will make this election peaceful, so that at the end of the day, whoever is elected, the world will see that it's a credible election.
Right. And as
you are
these-
holding back on it.
Right. And as these elections draw near, do you get the sense from point of view of the opposition, the PDP, that the electorate is approaching this election and their political choices from a place of anger, given what they've had to bear over the years?
That is why we want a credible election, so that allow the people to vent. Like I said initially, if you want people to vote for you and you're going to represent them, why strangulate them? They should be free to make choices. And the choice before them is the last 16 years before this government, and the last 3.5 years or so, choose. Let them choose freely.
Okay, well, we'll have to watch and see what happens, especially with that Electoral Act. But Honorable Sergius Ogun, a leading member of the opposition PDP party from Edo State and Deputy Chairman of the Committee on the Federal Capital Territory in the House of Representatives, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's it for this edition of Nigeria, The Road to 2019. Join us again for a fresh edition tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.